Our scripture reading today comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Hear now these words from God. When God began to create the heavens and the earth was without shape or form. It was dark over the deep sea, and God's wind swept over the waters. God said, "Let there be light." And so light appeared. God saw how good the light was. God separated the light from the darkness. God named the light day and the darkness night. There was evening and there was morning, the first day. May God add blessing to the reading and hearing of the Holy Word.
Welcome to Holy Ground, our summer series featuring America's national parks. I have been planning this series for a year. Last June, I saw an advertisement for this book, America's Holy Ground, 61 Faithful Reflections on Our National Parks by Brad Lyons and Bruce Barkhauer, which we now have in our church library, by the way. And right away, I thought, what fun! We should do that next summer. I was imagining something like a virtual Route 66 road trip, taking us to all of these iconic American places. Now, fast forward 12 months, and it's like, I don't want anything virtual ever again. On the other hand, since nobody's really going anywhere right now, and since we can't even be together yet, this might actually be exactly what we need. A road trip in our minds to beautiful places, meaningful places, places that we share as one body, one people, one nation. Holy ground that we can stand on together and soak in the grandeur of God. Sorry about that. Lyons and Barkhauer write, "For as long as humans can remember, we have looked at the wondrous beauty of the world and sought to understand our place under the stars. In the tallest peaks of the mountains, we see transcendence, a thin place between ourselves and the heavens. Verdant valleys remind us of the abundance that earth provides. Desert landscapes leave us alone with our thoughts. Roaring oceans remind us of the untamed power of this natural world. We see beauty in these places," they write. "Sometimes we see, or at least feel, something else our eye cannot fully see nor our mind fully understand. These are," they write, "holy moments, thin moments of divine connection and revelation when we see the handiwork of God right then, right there, right in front of us. This is holy ground, places where God takes our breath away, moments when we are awakened to deeper meaning and deeper vision. My hope with this series is that even though we can't actually go to these places right now, we will nonetheless be awakened to that deeper meaning and that deeper vision through our encounters each week. And maybe, just maybe, even though we will be in these places only virtually, and we will be together for now at least, only virtually, the power and the grandeur of God will still leave us breathless. My thanks to John and Robbie Golson for sharing some of their favorite national parks photographs with us this summer. This is one of them, and you'll see more of these, as the summer goes along. As Tom shared, today we have traveled to Acadia National Park in Maine. Acadia has been a national park for 101 years, known as the crown jewel of the North Atlantic coast. Its 47,000 acres of land and sea are home to more than 1,000 different species, including moose, bear, deer, otters, minks, bats, birds, mice, fish, and reptiles of every kind. Tide pools at the shoreline teem with sea stars and crabs and anemones and an abundance of sea snails. Farther out from the shore, school bus-sized humpback whales launch themselves clear out of the water on bright summer days and come splashing back down with the sound of thunder. A day in Acadia National Park is like stepping into the creation story. God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures. Let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky, and let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, creeping things and wild animals of the earth." And God saw that it was good. That is Acadia. Acadia National Park receives 3.5 million visitors each year, many of whom come for one very ordinary, but at the same time quite extraordinary experience, watching the sun rise, or set, as the case may be. You see, from October to March, Acadia National Park on the coast of Maine is the first place in the continental United States to greet each new day. As the sun begins to rise, the rosy fingers of dawn reach out across the sea and touch those granite shores of our home first. There, right there, the darkness changes to light in America for the first time each day. "Let there be light," God said. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. John and Robbie were there for that. This photograph captures that moment. On their visit to Acadia, they got up at 4 in the morning to travel to the top of Cadillac Mountain. It was chilly cold, and the ground was rough. Stumbles over roots and rocks. It was a challenge for them to find their way in the dark to the top of the mountain. But boy, was it worth it. Gathered around them were people, lots of people, young and old and in between, strangers all. Nearby, a baby was having his diaper changed. Others spoke in hushed tones, settling themselves in for the moment. Robbie says that as it got closer to dawn, the crowd sank into a still, reverent silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Right then, right there, right in front of them, that place became holy ground, a sanctuary. Once they were no people. Now they were a community bound together by something so simple, something so ordinary, a sunrise. We take sunrises for granted nearly every single day. But in that place and at that moment, that motley group of strangers realized just how profound a sunrise can be. The dawning of something new, a new beginning, a new light. In that moment, God took their breath away and awakened them to deeper meaning, deeper vision. They saw as one. They breathed as one. They even seemed to think as one. Everyone, Robbie says, was in awe at this thought. We are the first ones to see this new day. Let there be light, God says, and there is light, and God sees that the light is good. In the beginning there was darkness. That's the witness of Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, the earth was formless and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. In the beginning, it was chilly cold and dark and wet. Put yourself in this scene. Picture it. Can you see the dark, swirling waters? Can you feel the chill? The fear, even. I mean, who wants to be treading water in a cold, dark sea with an abyss stretching down below for how many fathoms? This is the stuff of nightmares. In the beginning, it was a little bit of a nightmare. Primeval chaos, the Bible scholars call it, unsettled disorder, a world devoid of light and hope and life. In the beginning, when everything was a dark, scary, chaotic mess, God stood right there, right in the middle of it all, right in the midst of the primal fears and the primeval chaos, right in the middle of the mess. God stood right there and proclaimed, "Let there be light." And in so doing, God brought forth hope, light, indeed life upon the earth. In the beginning, there was darkness. Right now, there is darkness. Right now, there is so much darkness and fear and overwhelming mess. Right now, it is just one great big, chaotic, overwhelming mess. I just want to throw my hands up in despair. No, that's not really true. That's not what I really want to do. If I'm being honest, what I really want to do is run away. I want to run away and hide. I want to go off into the woods and find a nice little mossy hole somewhere and curl up in there and hide. That's what I really want to do. I want this all to go away. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to read about it. Heavens to Betsy, I certainly don't want to preach about it. It is all so painful and scary. It is all too much. I want to run away and hide. But I cannot. I do not have that privilege. Actually, that's not really true. I could run away and hide. I know where a whole lot of nice little mossy holes are out there. I could run away and hide. I do have that privilege in one sense, but not in another. Not in another. And this is why. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 tells me that I have been created in the image of God. And we have just established that God does not run off and hide in some mossy little hole somewhere because it's all too much. What kind of God would that be? How could we ever rely on God for anything? Your husband has cancer? Sorry, it's all too much. I got to go run off and hide in a mossy little hole. Despair? You're on your own there. Loss, doubt, crisis, pain? Where did my mossy hole go? It was just here a minute ago. No, that is not what our God does. Our God does not run off and hide when it's all too much and the going gets tough. In the beginning, when the earth was formless and void and darkness covered the face of the deep, what does God do? God stands right smack dab in the middle of all that mess, with the chaos swirling all around and the whelming flood lapping at his feet, and God proclaims, "Let there be light." I do not have the privilege of running off to my mossy hole, because I have been created in the image of God, and that means that God expects me to stand right smack dab in the middle of the chaotic mess and the whelming flood and proclaim, "Let there be light." But that's not the end of it. Genesis chapter 1 doesn't let me off the hook, and neither does Jesus. Because just as I have been created in the image of God, I have also, as a willing, confessed, baptized Christian, I have given myself over to be formed in the likeness of Christ, to use Paul's words for it from Romans chapter 8, verse 29. That is what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, to allow the Christ to form us in his own likeness. So that begs the question, what is the likeness of Christ? John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and that life was the light to all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. So here we are back to light again. But even that is not all, because John goes on. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. We've looked at that word before, lived. Made so banal and bland in English, lived among us. That is not the full picture we would get if we were reading this passage in Greek, which is the language the New Testament was written in. The Word became flesh and lived among us. In Greek, that word is skenao, and it means pitched a tent. The Word became flesh and pitched a tent among us, right there in the dirt. Right there on the rough, rocky, stumbly ground, the Word, that would be Jesus, pitched a tent. Right there in the scary dark of the wilderness where it is chilly cold, Jesus pitched a tent. Right there in the great big middle of the mess and the chaos, Jesus pitched a tent. He didn't go running off to hide in any holes, much less, mossy holes. He stepped into the chaos. He stepped into the hunger. He stepped into the pain. He stepped into the discord. He stepped into the fear. He stepped into the storm. He stepped into the sin, into that formless void that is the human condition. A dark, so dark, it crucified him. A failing so deep, it becomes monstrous. A grotesque distortion of what it means to be human. Unflinchingly, Jesus stepped right in there, with danger swirling all around and bloodlust lapping at his feet. You think that was easy? You think it was easy for Jesus to pitch a tent in those places? To stand in that chaos and absorb that pain? Jesus doesn't run and hide. What kind of Savior would he be if he did? He stands right there with us in the mess. He pitches a tent right smack dab in the middle of it all, shining his light into all that darkness. And darkness doesn't stand a chance. It is a darkness that can never, not ever, be overcome by the power of his light. I do not have the privilege of running off to my mossy hidey hole because I am trying to be conformed to the likeness of Christ. That is what it means to be his disciple. And so, this day, I choose to pitch a tent. I will pitch my tent in the chaos and the mess. I will pitch it in the dirt and on the rough, rocky ground. I will pitch it there. And then I will do my very best to do as Jesus did. I will step into hunger. I will step into pain. I will step into discord. I will step into fear. I will step into the storm. I will get on my knees and love others as I have been loved. I will bind up wounds. I will present myself as a living sacrifice. I will have ears to hear and eyes to see. I will do justice and love kindness and walk humbly with God. I will let my light shine. Right now, there is darkness. But if I let my light shine, and if you let your light shine, the rosy fingers of a new dawn will touch our shores with hope. And darkness will turn to light. In the beginning, God says, "Let there be light." And there is light. And God sees that the light is good.